An international meeting on South-South sharing of successful tax practices was held at New York University in May 2008. The meeting was part of an innovative program of the Special Unit on South-South Cooperation of the United Nations Development Program and the Financing for Development Office of the UN's Department of Economic and Social Affairs. Leading tax administrators and experts from around the world met to share experiences in introducing tax practices to generate revenues from domestic resources for national development. They spoke of the central importance of building effective tax cultures and systems to achieve sustainable development. And they advocated to the upcoming Doha Review Conference that the UN form mechanisms for continuing learning exchanges of information, perspectives, and expertise in tax policies and administration to help guide southern countries in their quest for inclusive development.
The importance of tax in development, and there's a lot of discussion at the moment among the diplomatic circles about the importance of tax in developing a country's resources and leading to sustained development and inclusive development of all the people in that country. So the objects of this meeting were first of all to share successful experiences in the South among other southern countries. We don't use the term, as I say, South-South because of the role of the Special Unit on South-South cooperation. There's a second aspect, and that is that there will be in this meeting and in future meetings and maybe in technical cooperation and assistance which flows out of this meeting, because we very much hope that there's an impact on the ground of this project and this meeting and future meetings. We think also there'll be an identification of areas where there's more need for cooperation amongst developing countries in setting the global tax rules which affect them, even in a de facto sense, that there be areas of international tax norms which develop and which affect developing countries, and it's very important that they have a role in shaping those norms.
As all of you here know, the whole question of cooperation in tax matters and enhancing tax systems, both at the domestic level and also at the international level, figured prominently in this conference and in the agenda of what we call the FFD process. And it has been growing tremendously over the years. At the time of Monterrey, it was still considered by some to be a rather controversial issue, and we were not able to put too much about that in the final document that came out of that conference, the Monterrey Consensus. In the 6 years that have passed since then, we have seen this topic grow exponentially, to the degree that now everybody talks about it. They talk about how important it is to improve cooperation in tax matters, to bring the whole issue of tax questions into the discussion. And in the FFD process, we deal with this at the domestic level, trying to talk about the problems developing countries in particular face to improve their tax systems and therefore to mobilize resources for their savings and for their investment for development.
The conference participants recognized that to accelerate poverty reduction and development, it is necessary to mobilize domestic resources through raising tax revenues.
Clearly, at least in developing countries, government must play a large role in economic development, and government need the revenue. So when revenue are much too low, simply they cannot do a good job. When revenue become too high, then there are questions on whether the marginal tax rate are too high and may discourage development. So there is a happy balance. There is an optimal level of taxation which would probably work best in most countries. Up to now, much of the collaboration in the tax area has come through the OECD. The OECD Committee on Fiscal Affairs has been doing a good job, but the OECD is limited to about 30 countries. And so most of the countries, even large countries like India, China, Brazil, etc., are out of the OECD. So it's very important to move the center of collaboration, maybe still including the OECD, but moving it to a larger group, to a group that includes most countries.
The meeting noted that developing countries urgently need clearer, practical rules to deal with a range of complex transfer pricing issues.
Globalization has given challenges to all countries. Now there are cross-border transactions. Then there are transactions by multinationals with their own associated concerns. Transfer pricing issues are involved. Their interpretation of double taxation treaties are involved. And as the commerce is getting complex, income tax is also facing complex problems.
For example, transfer prices is an obvious area. It's now countries, many enterprises have ceased to be national enterprises. There are many enterprises that are global enterprises, so they can manipulate the difference in taxes between one country and another. The taxation of non-labor income, taxation of interest, dividends, etc., has become a major problem. If the taxation of this kind of income are not coordinated in some way, then there is always the possibility that people put money in, for example, in tax haven and make investment from tax haven to other countries.
In the area of natural resources, ensuring that resource-based development is inclusive and not detrimental in environmental impacts is an area where tax systems can play a role.
You've actually brought out the challenge we're currently facing in Nigeria, the challenge of depending on one resource and at the same time trying to build sustainable revenue flows. It's a major challenge. And one way we've tried to address that is to, first of all, make the tax officer as well as the larger Nigerian public recognize the developmental challenges facing us. In other words, even if we depended 100% on one product, in the case of Nigeria, oil and gas, the monies that will be generated will not be enough for development. So we needed to get that message across, and that has been the message we've been sending out repeatedly in the last 1 year or so. And so it's to remove that myth that oil money is enough, and that without oil money, nothing, with oil money, that's all we need.
The UN has a big role to play in furthering this kind of exchange. If I just go back to the topic we are discussing today, the extractive industries, I believe that the UN getting involved early enough to ensure that there is good negotiation in terms of profit of revenue share. There is negotiations within the communities in the country that these minerals or oil products are being extracted would help in ensuring that everybody feels they have been dealt with fairly. Both the companies that are extracting these minerals and the oil, and the communities within which these products are being extracted. If they don't come in early, maybe they may come in later to try and reduce the wars, the fighting. I know that some of the countries that have oil products or have these have these minerals have got lots of social problems and wars going around them. So if that is one motivation for the UN to get involved, I think it's a good thing for them to get involved early.
The meeting drew attention to the great challenges of dealing with the information deficit and the skills deficit when dealing with complex international taxation issues. Shared experience and advice among developing countries can be highly cost-effective in this area.
There are two areas where we have been working on. One is the legislation, tax legislation, and the other one is the tax administration. The tax policy and tax legislation is a responsibility of the Ministry of Finance. And what we have been in the last 5 years doing in Guatemala is to try to expand our tax base, not rising the rates of taxes, because we recognized that it is important to build a voluntary compliance practice in our system.